Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are back taking our very first look at the new Tier 8 American heavy cruiser Buffalo. So with that being said, let's look at our commander, and I'll give you a couple of commander options, so don't worry. Our commander's Victor F. Einstein. We've got Victor F. Einstein with Nikolai Kuznetsov and Francesco Membelli as our inspirations. We are also running Beyond Range, Intuitive, Punch Through, and Fixated with the Refill Station perk. Okay, now we are running Intuitive because it gives us the direction of the nearest ship, and it also gives us longer duration on our radars. So it's all good things, right? If you don't have Victor F. Einstein, Norman Scott is obviously the free-to-play commander for the Americans. So if you've got him, I would probably run something similar. Obviously, you would have Beyond Range, use Igniter, Punch Through. You could go Armed and Ready, but honestly, having the extra armor piercing penetration comes in handy against battleships, being able to citadel battleships and so on and so forth. So highly recommend that over this, but it's, to each their own. And obviously Fixated with Refill Station or Fully Packed. Fully Packed gives you an extra heal, extra radar, extra sonar, whereas Refill Station increases your main battery reload time, or decreases your main battery reload time. We've got Philip Vian and Nikolai Kuznetsov on here. You could swap Philip Vian, obviously, for Membelli if you guys want. Those are all the free-to-play commanders. Now, the other build is the Azure Lane Baltimore build. This would actually help, I think, initially, because you have the rudder shift time getting better with her base trait. And then, obviously, you can run Isiroko Yamamoto for extra AP shells, or you go with Nikolai Kuznetsov and Francesco Membelli for a little bit more DPM and range. But Beyond Range, Igniter, instead of Punch Through, we use Absolute Ammunition. Now, Absolute Ammunition does reduce your shell fuse time, so you're not likely to citadel battleships necessarily, but you do have a better chance of citadeling cruisers. So there's that, instead of overpinning them. So pick your poison. But it gives you basically the same, this gives you a little bit more AP shell damage, but it gives you the same penetration multiplier. It's just that this one lowers the AP shell fuse time, which gives you a better chance of citadeling, especially light cruisers. And then obviously Fixated, and then we're using Fully Packed, or you can run Refill Station. Now on the 203s, you never need to run Equilibrium of Power. One of the things that I hear a lot of people ask about is, why don't you run Equilibrium of Power on your 203, so you don't need it. They have enough armor penetration with the HE rounds that you don't actually need Equilibrium of Power. So all you're doing is reducing the amount of damage that you do, and you're reducing your fire chance by half. So it doesn't make any sense. Alright, so that's the commanders. Let's look at the build. We are fully upgraded. Obviously, we're running Aiming Systems Mod 1, Steering Gears Mod 2. You could go Steering Gears Mod 3 here as well. Just due to the fact that this thing has terrible rudder shift, so you might want to buff that even more rather than take the concealment. That's up to you. And then obviously main battery mod 3 for a little bit faster gun reload. But we are fully upgraded, and if you look, we have 2 sonars, 2 radars, and 2 heals. We are running the Epic Battle Booster. I'll remove that for this stats so that you guys can see the stats as the build is. We are running the Alpha Test Flag, which does nothing. It's purely cosmetic. And then the Anniversary Camo was the one that I settled for making permanent for this particular ship because I like the look of it. Survivability, 47,800 hit points with a 19% torpedo damage reduction. Artillery, you get 203mm Mark 15 guns. You get 12 of them. You get 4 triple turrets. Firing out to 18 kilometers with this build, and 7.8 second reload time. 180 degree turn time is 25.8 seconds, so pretty slow for a cruiser. But HE shell maximum damage 2800 with a 14% chance to set fires, and AP shell maximum damage of 5500. Do not sleep on the AP, as you should all know. Like Des Moines and Balti both have ridiculously good AP, and this has the exact same AP. It slaps. If you give it a broadside in a battleship, or even at range, if you're at 17 or so kilometers and you get some good plunging fire on a stationary target like a battleship sitting in the back of the map, you can absolutely citadel them with AP plunging fire. So keep that in mind. But you also have 12 127mm Mark 32s that reach out to 5.2 kilometers and reload every 6 seconds with an 1800 shell damage for HE and a 5% chance to set fires. AA defense isn't the greatest on this thing. You get 20mm Ehrlichen Mark 20s. You get 32 of those doing 98 damage per second, reaching out to only 2 kilometers, so it's very close range before that even gets activated. Then you got the 40mm Bofors Mark 1s that you get only 8 of that do 45 damage per second, reaching out to 3.5 kilometers, so not particularly great. But then you got the 40mm Bofors Mark 2 that you get 44 of that do 175 damage per second, reaching out to 3.5 kilometers, which is a lot better. And then the 127mm Mark IIs, you get 12 of those doing 91 damage per second, reaching out to 5 kilometers. Maneuverability maximum speed 33 knots, which is what you come to expect out of American ships at high tiers, because they were all built to stay with carriers. So they're all right around 32, 33 knots. That's literally all the American ships at this point, pretty much. With the exception of maybe the destroyers. But turning circle is pretty bad, 800 meters, and it has a terrible rudder shift time of 9 seconds, and that's with a rudder, a single rudder build. That's why I say you might want to go double rudder or use Azure Lane Balti for her base trait. So it's something that you might want to buff, because trying to dodge shells in this thing's pretty awful in open water. Concealment 11.2 by sea. 7 by air. 2 is always guaranteed. 7.5 kilometer smoke firing penalty, which is actually, I think, worse than usual. I thought this should be like down closer to 7, but 7.5 kilometer smoke firing penalty. Maybe I'm wrong. Seems a little high for a heavy cruiser. But as you can see, the armor still what you come to expect out of a Baltimore or a Des Moines. It's 27 millimeters pretty much everywhere, meaning you can bow tank everything up to 15-inch guns. Anything higher than 15-inch guns goes straight through and will annihilate you. If you go bow in, especially close range, any battleship with 16-inch guns and above can citadel you right through the bow, meaning you go back to port in a hurry. So be careful. While you do have the firepower to absolutely punish people if you catch them broadside, if they have 16-inch guns, they can return the favor and send you back to port faster than you can blink. Okay? So keep that in mind. If we get rid of all that, you can see the citadel here is above the waterline, which is something that is pretty unusual for American cruisers. Most American cruisers have a citadel below the waterline. You can see this one definitely reaches above that waterline. And you can see it has an extended citadel that goes in front of the main gun. It's a pretty small one, but if somebody overmatches you right at the waterline or with any sort of plunging fire through the bow, there is a good chance that you get citadeled. So keep that in mind. It does not like to get shot through the bow. And the same for the stern. There's not a lot of ship between the back and the citadel, so if you're stern tanking and somebody overmatches, there's a good chance you're going to take a citadel there as well. So while these ships are incredibly powerful for their DPM and their ability to A, burn things down, and B, punish with AP and have great radars, at the end of the day, you're still going to be struggling with the fact that you have really susceptible to anything with 16-inch guns and above, which at tier 8 means pretty much everything. Bismarcks, Tirpitz, basically any German battleship other than the Friedrich der Grosse and GK, and then of course the British battleships with their 15-inch guns, and the French battleships with 15-inch guns, with the exception of Republique and Champagne and so on. There are a lot of people that overmatch you. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, that being said, against cruisers, if you get into a gunfight with a cruiser, you're going to annihilate them more often than not, just because your AP is ridiculous. And you have good DPM on top of that. So if any cruiser decides that they want to fight you, if they stay bow in, you burn them down. If they're trying to angle and get torps, you delete them with your AP and citadels. So keep that in mind. Reloader, above average main battery reload speed, which we've already talked about. Powerful AA defenses, which, I mean, for a heavy cruiser, I guess it does. But again, a lot of that AA is really short range, being 3 kilometers or 3.5 kilometers or less, meaning they have to be right on top of you for it to actually start to do real damage. And then sluggish shot, though, is the downside. Obviously, you've got, at longer distance, it's very difficult to hit, especially agile targets. So keep that in mind. Buffalo. This heavy cruiser design appeared soon after the development of Cruiser Baltimore was completed and was her direct successor, Project CAB. The increased water displacement allowed engineers to significantly reinforce the ship's armor protection and armament. The number of main guns was augmented to a total of 12 overall. Year of design was 1940, and this is one of the few American ships that's in the game that actually was not built, I don't think. So keep that in mind. But other than that, I mean, it's what you'd expect out of an American heavy cruiser. Everything that you love about them, everything that you hate about them. Like, there's nothing that really jumps out at you other than the fact that it has a little bit bigger turret, or it has a little extra turret on it. But other than that, it's very, very similar to Baltis, to Des Moines. You know what to expect at this point. So, with that being said, let's get to our gameplay. Alrighty, so we're going to be on Atlantic, and we are on the bottom spawn near A. So, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to hold our side at all costs. Now, the Buffalo is one of those ships that I have quite a bit of experience in ships that are similar, but this one in particular gets me into trouble. Why is that? Well, it has to do with that 4th turret. The legendary 4th turret. Why is the legendary 4th turret a problem? Because it tempts you to use it. I know, right? Sounds stupid. But seriously, when you're in a Baltimore, you have 2 turrets at front, 1 at the back. So you really don't need to use that 3rd turret. Do you really get that much out of the 3rd turret? Not really. So you tend to stay bow in. However, when you have 4 turrets, you double your firepower by going broadside to use that 4th turret, right? Problem with that is, all your armor's at the front, and when you go broadside, bad things happen. It is that simple. So, while you do have 4 turrets, you gotta be very, very aware of what's going on when you decide to use it. Because if you're not, you're gonna go back to port in a hurry. Well, Spartan, that seems pretty blatantly obvious. Any ship that's ever had that, think of all the ships that have the extra turrets. Cleveland, Worcester, you know, any of the other mediocre cruisers out there that everybody seems to think are better than the Americans, but really aren't. If they actually, you know, admit that it isn't just my American bias that's saying, oh, the American ships are better. No, it's the fact that the American ships are better. Like, they have the best AP, they have the best HE, they are just absolutely disgusting in terms of DPM, and when all else fails, when you see an American ship coming at you, you know you're about to have a bad day. Whether you're in a destroyer, a battleship, a cruiser, or a carrier. Doesn't matter. American ships rule the waves. But Spartan, this is a Russian company. How can you sit there and tell me that the Americans are the preferred? I mean, let's be honest. It may be originally a Russian company, but their primary audience is American. And so it makes sense that American ships have some slight advantages. American bias confirmed! Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you? Now, right off the bat, you can see we have taken up a position of power. And we are behind an island, and we are not spotted. And then we get to use all our firepower. This is where you want to be when you get to use these kind of shots, okay? When you want to use all your firepower, get behind an island. Because if you're out in the open, this thing just is not maneuverable enough to avoid the shells that you're going to receive and the punishment that you're going to take. I promise you, I'm not an idiot. That is the truth. Ask me how I know. Please, Anybody, in the comment section, say, hey Spartan, how do you know that if you go broadside in open water in the Buffalo, that it ends horribly? Some of you are probably putting 2 and 2 together, and for you, I salute. But the rest of you who still haven't figured it out yet, trust me, it ends poorly. So, we're going to go a little bit further to the left, and you can see the enemy has taken the center cap, and they have taken the A cap, and our destroyer here has decided that he wants to, like, I don't know, just sit here. So, I'm going to try to help. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to use that beautiful 9-kilometer radar and say, hello, Fletcher, how are you? Yeah, we're going to make you have a real bad time. See, this is the beauty of American cruisers right here. That long sonar, or radar, sorry. The long radar is devastating for destroyers. But unfortunately, the Fletcher gets away with it because he has a mines as backup. And, you know, sitting broadside to any cruiser in a cruiser is a bad idea. Especially one that's smart enough to learn to use AP. So as you can see, we turn away, we negate most of his damage, and we're going to live to fight another day. And by live to fight another day, I mean this mines has not gotten the picture. He's bow in, he's taking punishment from everybody, but I still have priority targets, and a destroyer is always a priority target. So while we are still getting shot by the mines, it's inconsequential to what we can affect the match by getting rid of the Fletcher. So that's what we're going to try to do. Fletcher has beached himself on island, he's reversing, he's trying to get out of there, but you can see we are relentless in our pursuit of removing him from the match. We're trading a lot of hit points for this. We need to get this kill. And as you can see, we are the only one prioritizing the Fletcher right now, as he's slowing down to change direction. We actually missed him again, and you can see we're switching to AP because Mines has decided to give us a broadside. And it's about this point that I take the shot and try to finish him off, but Delny finishes him first, and then we managed to finish the Mines, while the Delny and I switch targets and he finishes the Fletcher. So we remove both of those guys from battle. That's huge. Why is that so huge? Because it allows us to do what we should be able to do next, which is, I don't know if you noticed, there's kind of an island sitting right in front of us. And what did we already say about being able to sit behind an island and use all 4 guns? It's a beautiful thing. There is nothing quite like the satisfaction of being in a very nasty DPM cruiser sitting behind an island where nobody can shoot back at you. It really is glorious. Now, right now, you might be going, Spartan, they can clearly see you. If they wanted to shoot you, you'd be dead. And you're correct. But not anymore. Not anymore. So now, we gotta reach out and touch these mines. These guys don't have any clue what's about to befall them. We've got a Georgia who's just, like, for the entirety of the match, tried to avoid me, and now he's running out of room to avoid me, so we're gonna force him out into the open. He's got to get away from us. If he sits there, he dies. And we're spreading the love between the Jean Bart and the Georgia here because, you know, you always gotta spread the love. You know, when you're in a DPM cruiser, it's not fair to target just one person with your DPM. You gotta target the entire friggin' team. And when you do so, it is pretty glorious, I'm not gonna lie. We've got permafires burning on the Georgia, so we turn our attention to the Jean Bart, who thinks that he's got what it takes to remove us from our position of power. But unfortunately for him, he is wrong as we set another fire on him. Well, he immediately damage cons said fire, and he's like, whew, that was close. Wouldn't want to see what happens if he manages to continue to burn us down for the next 5 minutes. Yeah, well, you burned your damage con, and look at the wall of skill! Didn't see that coming, did you, buddy? This is what we call a viable distraction. We may not be the closest thing to the enemy, but them wanting to remove the threat of being HE spammed leaves them open to making really bad decisions that end horribly for them. Our destroyer clearly captured the base. The Jean Bart should have seen that he was capturing the base. I'm shooting from behind an island, and yet he still was so intrigued in trying to get rid of me that he took all of those torpedoes from the destroyer. And this is the danger of battleship captains. Like, battleship captains, beware. Like, y'all know what it's like. There is no destroyer that is more terrifying than the one that you don't know exists. It's like a snake, really. Snakes are not all that scary if you can see them and you know exactly where they're at, right? However, if you know there's a snake nearby and you have no idea where he's at and you can't see him, then he becomes terrifying, okay? So, it's the same thing with destroyers. Destroyers are not that scary if you know where they're at. You can dodge their torpedoes easily enough, and battleships or cruisers, it doesn't really matter. You can dodge them relatively easily. However, if you're engaged in a conflict versus other battleships or cruisers, and you're bow into them, and you're having to adjust your course or whatever to try to stop them, or God forbid you have to stop and potentially reverse to keep some sort of distance between you and the bad guys to keep your angling up, and then all of a sudden you get that beep, 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 alarm going, oh my god, there's torpedoes off the starboard side. And there's nothing you can do. You're literally just, you're screwed. So now we get to bomb on these guys, and look, there's another island between me and the bad guys. And we have spotting by our destroyer, who we helped to get rid of the Jean Bart with. He's spotting those guys, and I get to sit behind the island and do what DPM cruisers do best, which is just murder everything, or at least do damage to everything. Now, we haven't had that high of a DPM, or we haven't had that much damage. Why? Because we've been the guys setting the original fires. The real damage of a DPM cruiser shows up when you get to set the perma fires. And we just haven't been able to do that. In fact, we haven't even gotten that many fires, but what we've lacked in fires early in the match, we're starting to make up for now that we've set 2 fires in rapid succession on an Izumo, who damage conned the first fire and is now in struggle bus mode. Japanese battleships, if you didn't know, have very short damage con duration, meaning they are very susceptible to immediately being multiple fired after damage conning a single fire. And this guy is now on a double perma fire. He fires his guns at us, but he gets a couple of mediocre penetrations, and of course everybody has to chime in and steal the kill. But we've gone from 80 to 90,000 to suddenly having 130,000 thanks to that Izumo. And the Buffalo out here at maximum range is going to be struggle bus city for us to try to hit. Remember, Buffalo isn't the most agile cruiser in the world. Even Hipper would probably struggle to be agile in this thing. It's not a particularly shifty cruiser. However, what it lacks in, ability to dodge, it kind of makes up for in just refusal to die. As we drop bombs on him and get another fire, and he, of course, damage cons it, and shells are coming from everywhere, and this guy's still alive. He's still alive. Never mind. We got him. I thought you guys thought I was going to miss him, didn't you? Didn't you? Now, while these guns do take a long time to reach the target, and it is very difficult to hit certain targets at range, if you've played a lot of American cruisers, you know what you're doing by now. But the Z-46, to his credit, is not going down without a fight. He just gunned down a Dmitry Donskoy. Yeah, you heard that right. He gunned down a Dmitry Don... I don't know how it works. Like, any cruise, no self-respecting cruiser should ever lose a gunfight with a destroyer. Like, it shouldn't happen. Now, the only thing I can figure is Dmitry probably took a torpedo or two in some point, or has just been beat up over the course of the battle, and he was very low health. And the destroyer has the ability to dictate the engagement, so there's a good chance that he just popped up, shot a couple times, and killed the guy, and then disappeared immediately before he was able to be shot. That's my guess. That is the beauty of destroyers, believe it or not. The sheer ability to dictate the engagement. It doesn't matter if you leave a destroyer on 1 HP. I don't know why I just said HP. I just turned like full-on Irish or British for a second and said H. Why? I don't know. But yeah. So it doesn't matter if you leave them on 1 HP. They can still absolutely annihilate an enemy team. Why? Because they're completely invisible 99.999% of the time. And the 001% of the time, yeah, I know, the 0.001% of the time, that they aren't invisible usually is just before you die. Whether it be by torpedoes, or by the fact that they know that you're low health and they can easily shoot you and kill you. Now, I wasn't 100% sure what this destroyer was doing. I just saw those torpedoes. You do see that I have the whatchamacallit, ingenious perk or whatever, the one that shows you on a cruiser where the destroyer's at, or the nearest ship. And since there's only one ship, kind of narrows down who it is, doesn't it? So, while our cruiser is going in to capture the Charlie Cap, which is absolutely the right play to make, you know this destroyer is probably going to kite away, he's going to run away, you're going to see that I start to pick up on the path that this destroyer is taking. Look, he's starting to move left to right. Now, he's not spotted, he's not in the cap, so he kind of just showed his hand here. And again, look how long it took us to make that turn. This ship does not turn well. So, keep that in mind. That's what gets you into trouble. You get those rear guns involved on people, and the next thing you know, you're getting slapped around because you over-angled. But you can see I'm pinging the map, I'm showing people where they are, and people are acknowledging where they are. The destroyer behind me, not so much. He's chasing shadows. Even though I'm clearly pinging the map and telling him where, roughly where this guy is. He's chasing the last known location of the destroyer and now just got the most unsatisfying thing ever. But you can see, we got detected there for a little bit. We didn't pop radar immediately. We wanted to get a little bit closer to the target so that we maximize our time on target here. And sure enough, we get some shots out and we're starting to miss. Again, I'm not the most accurate commander out there. Y'all know this. So it's not that surprising that I missed some shots, especially on a guy who's actively dodging in a very shifty little destroyer. Even at 8 kilometers, it's difficult to hit the guy. But unfortunately, radar goes out. That's our last chance to potentially shoot this guy, unless, of course, he does that one thing that all destroyer players do that makes them think that they're better than they are, where they just don't shoot their guns until like 1 second before the end of the game. It's kind of like a ricer flyby. You ever heard about that in like a street racing, where you beat a guy so bad, and yet when you let off and you clearly hit the brakes and disengage the race, he just goes flying by you like he just passed you on top end, like he just hit a nitrous button, right? And that's what we call a ricer flyby. Why? Because it's most notably, from little tiny cars. And trust me, I like little tiny cars as much as anybody, but it's most notably from little tiny cars that have no power whatsoever and just got their butts whooped. But top of the leaderboard, 2,700 base XP. You gotta love it. Confederate high cal. We did everything we needed to do. We traded hit points when necessary, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this relatively entertaining video. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.